23 rebels in the Democratic Republic of Congo have declared a ceasefire. Now, this paves the way for dialogue with that country's government. The truce comes just days after fresh fighting erupted between government forces and the rebels. The militants are also calling on regional and international partners to contribute towards restoring peace and stability in the country. Well, the French President Emmanuel Macron was in the DRC recently for a visit in a heated exchange between media colleagues in the heart of Africa and the French President. It saw the DRC calling for sanctions against Rwanda. You'll remember that the DRC is accusing Rwanda of supporting the M23 movement in the DRC. We speak more on this with Kabasu Babu Katulondi, African politics analyst. Thank you very much, sir, for your time this afternoon. Maybe let's start with a little bit of a understanding of what is happening in the DRC. Many believe if you get the DRC right, you will naturally get the rest of the continent right. That is the heartbeat of the continent. Exactly, and I think in the early 90s, right after South Africa had its democracy or democratization, in the momentum of African Renaissance, illustrious former President Thabo Mbeki, who's an excellent, distinguished African Pan-Africanist, he underlined the fact that exactly if you fix the DRC with its immense, enormous natural resources, strategic minerals, even potential for the construction of the world's most powerful hydroelectric dam, if you fix the Congo, then it is highly probable that you can stabilize Africa and trigger prosperity. Unfortunately, the African Renaissance momentum itself has eroded, and Congo is yet again at the top of headlines regarding its disaster, its military mayhem. The government of Rwanda says it is not contributing to instability in the north of the DRC. The DRC says, well, you are. They've even gone as far as asking the French president, who was there for a visit, to apply sanctions to Rwanda. What do you make of this move? Well, it is quite complex and tricky because, as you know, the Rwandan government has been, for the last 10 years, has been pointing fingers, accusing French of having participated, contributed to perpetration of genocide in Rwanda. And when President Macron took over as head of state in France, he endeavored to try and harmonize with Rwanda. So now Rwanda accuses Congo also of sort of aiding, assisting militarily those folks who had committed genocide in 1994 at FDLR and Interamwe, who are still very active in eastern DRC. So Rwanda accuses DRC of helping these people perpetrate genocide. And on the other side, Congolese government says Rwanda is assisting the M23 rebels. Yet, one of the key issues here pertains to the fact that the agreement for which M23 claims to be fighting, which is the so-called Addis Ababa agreement, which was signed, I think, on the 23rd of March, I think 2013, subsequent to the defeat of M23 by FARDC government forces of the DRC. If you look at that agreement, one of the core dimensional element pertains to the obligation for the Congolese government, irrespective of the regime that is in power, the Congolese government to accelerate democratization, which has tremendously eroded under President Tshisekedi, to accelerate decentralization, and to implement robust measures of reforms in the security apparatus. So I think it's an obligation of the Congolese government, irrespective of whoever is in power. So there's an objective element for which the M23 are fighting. And these three dimensions, the erosion of democratization process, decline of decentralization, lack of reforms in the security machinery, these are also subjects that the internal opposition is fighting for. So President Macron cannot take sanctions against Rwanda because President Macron, as he declared it, bluntly, of course, he holds a position that it is responsibility of the Congo to ascertain its security, to ensure its security, to ensure its administrative and political sovereignty. in whose interest is it that the Democratic Republic of Congo does not work? You speak of Felix Tshisekedi not ensuring those three elements of security, democratization and centralization, but is he the only leader of the Congo to have done this?
Of course, first of all, it's of paramount importance to emphasize the fact that President Mobutu in 1996, contrary to what some scholars say, he left not a failed state, but a totally, Congo actually is a single case in Africa of a collapsed and dislocated state. Some states can fail, but still holding, still dysfunctional. But in 1994 or 1997 when Mobutu left, the Congo was a collapsed and totally dislocated. There was no state, there was no economy. So President Kabila came, and it was then portrayed by some scholars as being the case of Africa's World War, because there were 9 armies, formal armies of African states involved in the war. President Kabila managed to get all these armies out, get the Congolese together here in South Africa, Sun City, dialogue, agreement. We triggered elections. We had a new institution. So he brought the Congo from a state, I would say, the condition of collapse and dislocation to, a weak state. President Tshisekedi came with the ambition of some kind of a political messiah, saying, well, I will even die. If I have to die, I will die, but I will make sure there's security in the East, etc., etc. When he came, there was no M23. M23 had been defeated in 2012, I think, under General Olenga, under Joseph Kabila. They were defeated, disbanded, and they were in Rwanda and Uganda. President Tshisekedi, believe you me, before even he ascended at the helm of the Congo, was collaborating with this disbanded, defeated M23. So when he got in power, he illegally brought these M23.
So this is a self-created problem?
Yeah, exactly. Because he brought them into the Congo. He wanted to create a special brigade under his own command and use them. Without even complying with the constitution and parliamentary and institutional mechanisms. So he brought them in Kinshasa for 14 months. He accommodated them in luxurious hotels. He even brought them to some strategic military bases like the military armored tanks in Mbanza-Ngungu and Kokolo military camp, etc., etc. So, but their own internal informal agreement, I think for financial reasons, didn't work. So these M23 guys went back into the bushes and they started the war. And 2019 or 2017 under Kabila, the relationship between Rwanda and Congo was kind of balanced. It was not very exuberant. But when President Tshisekedi came, because President Kagame was then head of African Union, and he didn't accept the results of the election in 2018, President Tshisekedi went to associate with him and signed a lot of deals, etc., etc. So President Macron, to a significant extent, is right when he says it's a self-inflicted sort of a wound.
Okay, so as recent as last week, the president of Uganda, Yoweri Museveni, was in South Africa. He spoke at length about the history of the continent, speaking of the lives of Patrice Lumumba and how he was removed from power, and he spoke of what he termed as traitors. He went as far as saying that Felix Tshisekedi must decide if he's on the side of traitors. I have no idea what that meant. I wish we had the opportunity to actually interview him and expand on that a little bit further. However, what then is the solution for the Democratic Republic of Congo? I think even from the times we were growing up, you hear of this instability. There are children who are growing up in this instability, but this is not sustainable, is it?
You're right. Absolutely. It's not sustainable for the people of Congo, for Africa, because unstable, destabilized Congo, inflamed, there's a lot that Africa is missing. Congo has got an enormous diversity of strategic minerals. I cannot begin to cite them here.
Just take out your cell phone.
Yeah. But the point here is that, as President Macron said, he said it very bluntly, and to a certain extent, many Congolese didn't like that. Many also Africans didn't like that because there was a tone of post-colonial condescending sort of discourse and saying, well, we have nothing to do with this, it is your own problem. To a certain extent, he's right, because the mistake that Mr. Tshisekedi made is that from Sun City or Pretoria Agreement, 2003 to 2018, the Congo had managed to implement some mechanisms, to take some actions to rebuild the state, rebuild the economy. You see, so President Tshisekedi, when he arrived, unfortunately for him, he had a problem with complying with the constitution. You know, Congo has got what we call semi-presidential regime, in which you have the president in terms of executive, you have the president, but you have also the prime minister who work together in terms of defining policy, but the government is in charge of implementing policy and takes responsibility vis-a-vis the parliament. Mr. Tshisekedi wanted to have overarching powers. You see, so the problem is first of all internal. So step number one, we need to have some kind of a dialogue, because democracy is dialogue. Let civil society, opposition, Mr. Tshisekedi's regime sit together and say, how do we go back to fixing the democratization process that is derailed? And then, now there's some kind of, if that brings some kind of relative cohesion, because there is no political cohesion, there's a crisis of legitimacy. There's no way you can now deal with M23 if inside the house you are divided. And then when we have a relative cohesion, then we can, as a bloc, sit with M23 to say, okay, you are right in terms, at least in principle, saying the accord, Addis Ababa Accord, responsibility number one was about democratization, decentralization, and reform. How do we implement this? Yeah. And now, also integrating elements of M23 in the army, it will be per case, per person. We can't just take everybody there in total and say, you are not part of the army. So it is feasible, it is possible. Rwanda are our neighbors.
Yeah, unfortunately. I wish we had more time for this conversation, but we'll definitely pick up on it because it's something that is never ending, right? And thank you very much to Kabasu Babu Katulondi, African politics analyst. Thank you, sir.